Last time, in the hidden kingdom of Myrmis, an ordinary worker ant named Kael was conscripted against his will and sent beyond the colony walls into the unknown Vale forest. He stood trembling before a creature called the Grolix and discovered that courage is not the absence of fear, it is taking the first step anyway. He took that step, and the forest let him pass. Tonight, we go deeper. Kael woke before Zorax. The forest was not dark at dawn. It was luminous. The bioluminescent moss on the roots pulsed more strongly in the early hours, as if the forest had its own heartbeat, and dawn was when it beat loudest. Droplets of condensation caught the teal and violet light and fell in slow arcs, each one trailing a tiny ribbon of color before it vanished into the earth below. He sat very still for a long time, watching. In Myrmis, every morning began with the sound of labor, the grind of stone on stone, the organized rush of worker columns, the chemical signals that told every ant exactly where to go and what to do. Structure, direction, purpose imposed from outside. Here, there was none of that. Here, the morning simply was. And in that stillness, for the first time in his life, Kael heard something he had never truly heard before. Silence. Not the absence of absence, the silence of presence. A living, breathing quiet that was full rather than empty. And within it, if you were still enough, there were sounds, layered, intricate, constant. The drip of moisture, the slow creak of ancient roots, and beneath it all something that was not quite sound and not quite feeling, a low resonance, like a note too deep to hear but not too deep to feel. Kael pressed one foreleg against the root wall beside him. The resonance moved through it like a pulse. "The forest is talking," he said. Zorax was awake. He said nothing, watching Kael with those steady, scarred eyes. "The forest is talking," Kael said again, looking at his foreleg against the root. "It always has been," Zorax replied. "Most ants just never stop moving long enough to notice." They broke camp and moved deeper into the Vale. The resonance Kael had felt grew stronger as they walked, not louder, but more present, like a sound that existed inside the body rather than outside it. The root corridors grew wider and older here. The fungi on the walls were enormous, some taller than Kael himself, pulsing slowly with a deep amber gold light that made everything look ancient and warm. And the sounds changed. What had been a low resonance became, Kael is almost certain he was not imagining this, something structured, rhythmic, almost like language. Not the pheromone language of Myrmis, chemical and immediate, something older, something that moved in cycles measured not in moments, but in seasons. "Kael," Zorax said carefully, "something ahead knows we are here." Zorax stopped walking. He turned to look at Kael with an expression that Kael had not seen on his scarred face. Something like respect. "Yes," he said simply, "and it has been waiting." They entered a clearing. It was unlike anything in the Vale forest so far. A wide circular space at the junction of 7 massive roots, their surfaces so densely covered with moss and fungi that the walls glowed with layered, overlapping colors. The floor of the clearing was soft with centuries of accumulated organic matter. In the very center, the air itself seemed to vibrate. And then, Kael felt it. A presence. Not threatening, something far older than threatening. A waiting that had been going on for years, perhaps decades, and that their arrival had simply now given purpose to. Kael had spent his whole life asking questions. He had always been the first to speak, to probe, to push at the edges of silence with words. Before Zorax could signal him to be still, before he had even processed the feeling of the presence fully, his mouth was already open. "We come from the colony of Myrmis. We mean no harm. We are seeking the blocked eastern trade routes, and we need—" The resonance stopped. Complete silence. Even the dripping moisture ceased. Even the fungi seemed to pause their slow pulsing. The absence of sound was so total it felt like a physical pressure against Kael's antennae. Zorax had closed his eyes. "You spoke," Zorax said quietly. "I was introducing us," Kael said. "She was still speaking," Zorax said. "You cut her off before you had heard what she was saying." Kael looked around the empty clearing. "Who was speaking? There's no one here." A sound came from everywhere at once. Not a voice, not exactly, but something that carried the weight and quality of one. Something that had been patient for a long time had just been interrupted, and now it would decide whether to continue. She revealed herself the way ancient things do, not by appearing, but by becoming visible. She had been there the entire time. The Vethara was vast. Her body was wide and disc-shaped, perhaps 30 antenna lengths across, covered with overlapping bark-like plates of deep mossy green and charcoal gray that had built up over what could only have been centuries of slow growth. Her face, if it could be called that, was ancient and still, smooth and curved like stone worn by water for 1,000 years. Set within it were two enormous eyes, each one the pale silver white of a full moon, deep and still and impossibly old. They held no aggression, no curiosity, no urgency of any kind. They held only attention. She was looking at Kael, not at Zorax, at Kael, and she had not yet decided to speak. Zorax stepped carefully to Kael's side and spoke in a voice barely a breath. "She is the Vethara. She is older than any creature you will ever meet. She communicates in the resonance, in the language of the roots. She was speaking to you before you arrived. She has been speaking to you since you woke this morning." Kael felt something cold move through him. The pulsing he had felt, the layered sounds beneath the forest quiet. That had been a voice. To pass through her territory and earn her guidance, you must do one thing. You must listen, completely, not waiting to respond, not formulating your next question. Just listen for as long as she speaks. "How long will she speak?" Kael asked. Zorax looked at him steadily. "That is not the right question." Kael understood. He turned back to the Vethara. This was, he quickly discovered, the hardest thing he had ever been asked to do. Every instinct he had was built for activity, for movement, for response, for the next question. His mind began to compose sentences almost immediately. He wanted to explain himself, to ask about the eastern routes, to understand what she was, to catalog her characteristics in the orderly way his mind cataloged everything. He forced each thought away as it came, one by one, like clearing a trail. And gradually, very gradually, the clearance began to work. The spaces between his thoughts grew longer, the urge to fill them with words softened, and in those spaces, the resonance began again. It returned first as feeling, then as rhythm, then slowly as something he could almost follow, almost understand if he stayed completely still. He stayed still. Time passed. He did not know how much. When the Vethara finally spoke in a way Kael's mind could receive, it was not with sound. It was with understanding, fully formed, as if the thought had always been inside him and she had simply unlocked the door. "You came with words already formed. You had prepared what to say before you knew what you would hear. That is the oldest mistake." Kael received this without reacting. He simply let it be true. "The forest has spoken to your colony for 1,000 seasons. Your colony has never once listened. Your eastern roots did not close because of danger. They closed because the creatures of the outer reaches tried to warn your people of what is coming, and your people kept walking past without hearing. A pause. The resonance deepened. What is coming cannot be stopped by strength. It can only be navigated by wisdom. Wisdom begins here, with learning to receive before you transmit, with understanding that every living thing around you is speaking, and you have been too loud to hear any of it. She paused again. Then, when you return to your colony, tell them this. The greatest leader is not the one who speaks the most. It is the one who hears the most. Tell them the forest said so. Then the resonance shifted, and Kael understood that she had given him everything she intended to give, and that it was enough. The Vethara's tendrils retracted slowly, drawing back into the earth with the unhurried deliberateness of everything she did. As they withdrew, the clearing changed. One of the root walls shifted, its massive form rotating with a deep, slow groan, revealing a corridor beyond that had not been visible before. A path, open, lit with amber fungi, leading deeper and eastward. Zorax was at Kael's side immediately. His expression was something Kael had not expected. Profound relief. She opened the deep corridor, Zorax said, his voice low. I have been in this forest 12 times. She has never opened the deep corridor. What is the deep corridor? Kael asked. It's the fastest route to the Eastern Territories. 3 days instead of 12, but she only opens it for those she judges worthy of it. Kael looked back at the clearing. The Vethara had not disappeared. She had simply become still again, her form settling back into the forest's visual texture until she was part of it once more. One enormous silver-white eye caught the light a final time before it closed. They walked for a long time in the amber corridor without speaking. The light here was different, warmer, more constant, less mysterious. The fungi grew in regular formations, as if this corridor had been tended and cared for by something over many years. The air smelled of old resin and deep earth, and something sweet that Kael could not identify. What is coming? Kael asked eventually. She said something is coming that the outer creatures tried to warn the colony about. What is it? Zorax was quiet for a moment. Then, I don't know, but I suspect we'll learn more before we turn back. Kael said the greatest leader is the one who hears the most, said Zorax, turning the words over. Yes. King Sedatus hasn't left his chamber in 7 seasons. He couldn't hear anything from in there. Not the colony, not the forest, not the outer territories, not his own people. Zorax said nothing, but he did not disagree. Kael walked in silence for a while longer. When I go back, he said quietly, I'm going to change that. It was the first time he had said when instead of if. Zorax noticed. He said nothing, but the scar on his face shifted, a small movement at the corner of his mouth. It was, Kael would later understand, the closest Zorax ever came to a smile. They made camp where the deep corridor widened into a small natural chamber, its walls thick with soft glowing moss. Kael sat with his back against the root wall and let the day settle into him the way the forest's sounds had, not grasped, just received. He thought about all the times in Myrmis when he had walked into a room already knowing what he was going to say. Every conversation with his supervisors, he had arrived with his arguments prepared, his rebuttals ready, his evidence organized. He had been so busy thinking about what to say that he had never truly heard what they said. He had wondered why no one listened to him, never once asking whether he had been listening first. He thought about the Vethara's enormous, still eyes, about the way she had waited, not impatiently, not with any urgency at all, simply waited, certain that listening was worth whatever time it took. He thought about the word when instead of if. Something had shifted. He could not have named exactly what, but he was not the same ant who entered this corridor. He was quieter inside, not emptied, fuller, as if the space that had always been filled with his own voice had been opened to receive something much larger. Before we leave Kael tonight, I want to ask you something. When was the last time you walked into a conversation having already decided what you were going to say? Most of us do it more than we realize. We arrive with our arguments built, our responses ready, our story prepared. And while the other person speaks, we are not truly listening. We are waiting for our turn. The Vethara had been speaking to Myrmis for 1,000 seasons, and for 1,000 seasons, every ant walked right past the message without hearing it, because they were all too busy with the sound of their own movement. You have a Vethara in your life, maybe many of them. The quiet person in the meeting who hasn't spoken yet, the parent who keeps trying to tell you something you keep interrupting, the situation that keeps repeating itself because you haven't stopped to hear what it is trying to teach you. Listen first, speak second. This is not weakness. This is the beginning of wisdom. One ant, one kingdom. Episode 3 arrives next week. Kael reaches the river of no return, and the lesson will challenge everything he thinks he knows about strength. Subscribe so you do not miss it, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it today. They will know exactly why you sent it.